The phone rang at 2 a.m. A shrill cry slicing through the silence of Caleb's cramped Brooklyn apartment. He ignored it, as he had ignored most things since Ethan vanished 3 weeks ago. But the name flashing on the screen, Detective Alvarez, clawed at his chest, demanding he answer. Caleb's fingers trembled as he picked up. "Hello." His voice cracked, betraying the sleepless nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment he'd pushed Ethan away. The detective's words were clinical. Cold a lead. A possible sighting in San Francisco. But no guarantees. Caleb's heart lurched. Ethan was out there. Somewhere. And he'd been too stubborn. Too scared. To reach out when it mattered. 5 years ago, they'd been inseparable. Caleb, with his sharp wit and guarded heart. And Ethan, all reckless charm and unshakable loyalty, had met in their senior year at NYU. Their friendship bloomed fast. A wildfire of late-night talks, shared coffee cups, and stolen glances that neither dared name. Caleb, 22 then, had felt something shift a pull toward Ethan that terrified him. He'd grown up in a small Ohio town, where different meant whispers and fists. So he buried it, pushed Ethan away with curt texts and canceled plans, until Ethan stopped trying. By the time Caleb realized what he'd lost, Ethan had moved across the country, leaving only silence. Now, Ethan was missing. The news came via a mutual friend, Sarah, who'd seen a post on social media, Ethan's sister, frantic, saying he hadn't been seen in weeks. Caleb's guilt was a living thing, gnawing at him. He'd ignored Ethan for years, convinced it was safer that way. But safety was a lie, and now Ethan was gone. Caleb booked a flight to San Francisco that morning. His savings were meager, his job as a freelance graphic designer barely covering rent. But none of that mattered. He packed a single bag, his mind racing with memories, Ethan's laugh, the way his hazel eyes lit up when he talked about painting, the night they'd almost kissed on a rooftop under a starless city sky. Caleb had pulled back, heart pounding, and changed the subject. He'd been a coward then. He wouldn't be now. The flight was a blur of turbulence and regret. Landing in San Francisco, Caleb felt the weight of the unknown. The city was vast, indifferent, its fog curling around him like a warning. Detective Alvarez met him at a diner near the station, her face all sharp angles and no nonsense. "We've got a sighting near the Mission District," she said, sliding a grainy photo across the table. "Ethan, or someone like him, in a hoodie, head down, crossing a street." Caleb's breath caught. It was him, those shoulders, that stride. But why was he running? What was he running from? Alvarez leaned forward. "He's been spotted with a group, possibly transients. No criminal record, but we're digging. You sure you want to get involved? This could get messy." Caleb nodded, his throat tight. Messy was fine. He'd been messy his whole life, hiding who he was, what he felt. He wasn't hiding anymore. The Mission District was a maze of murals and noise. Caleb wandered, clutching the photo, asking strangers if they'd seen Ethan. Most shook their heads, but only an older woman selling tamales squinted at the image. "Yeah, maybe. He was with some kids near the shelter on 16th. Looked lost." Her words hit like a punch. Ethan, lost. Caleb thanked her and headed to the shelter, his pulse hammering. The shelter was overcrowded, smelling of sweat and despair. A volunteer pointed him to a back room where a group of young men sat, sharing a cigarette. Caleb's eyes scanned their faces, desperate for a glimpse of Ethan. Nothing. But a lanky guy with a scar across his cheek caught Caleb's stare. "You looking for someone?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah," Caleb said, holding up the photo. "His name's Ethan. You seen him?" The guy studied the image, then shrugged. "Maybe. Lots of people come through here. Why's he matter to you?" Caleb hesitated. The truth felt too raw, too fragile. "He's someone I owe." The guy smirked, like he saw through the lie, but pointed toward an alley nearby. "Check there. Sometimes people crash in the tents." Caleb's shoes crunched on broken glass as he entered the alley. Tents lined the walls, tattered and patched. He called Ethan's name softly, then louder, his voice echoing off the brick. A shadow moved, and Caleb froze. A figure stepped out, hood up, face obscured. "Ethan." Caleb's voice broke. The figure turned, and for a moment, Caleb's heart stopped. But it wasn't Ethan, just a kid, maybe 19, eyes hollow. "Don't know no Ethan," he muttered, slipping back into the shadows. Caleb's hope crumbled, but he kept searching, driven by a need he couldn't name. He'd ignored Ethan for years, built walls to keep him out. Now, those walls were dust, and all Caleb wanted was to find him, to say what he'd never had the courage to say. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows. Caleb's phone buzzed. Alvarez again. "Got another lead," she said. "A bar on Valencia. Someone saw a guy matching Ethan's description last night. Be careful." Caleb nodded to no one, his resolve hardening. He'd search every corner of this city if he had to. Ethan was out there, and Caleb wasn't stopping until he found him. The bar on Valencia Street was a dive, all sticky floors and flickering neon. Caleb pushed through the door, the smell of cheap whiskey and stale cigarettes hitting him like a wave. His eyes scanned the crowd. Hipsters, drifters, a few locals nursing beers, searching for Ethan's familiar silhouette. He hadn't slept in 36 hours, his body running on coffee and adrenaline. The photo of Ethan was creased now, edges worn from being clutched too tightly. Caleb approached the bartender, a woman with a buzz cut and a skeptical frown. "You seen this guy?" he asked, sliding the photo across the counter. She glanced at it, then at Caleb, sizing him up. "Maybe. What's it to you?" Her tone was guarded, like she'd seen too many people chasing ghosts. Caleb's jaw tightened. "He's a friend. He's missing." The word friend felt like a betrayal, too small for what Ethan had been, but he didn't have time to explain. The bartender softened. "Just a fraction. Saw someone like him a couple nights ago. Kept to himself. Looked rough. Left with a guy tall. Tattoos. Kinda sketchy." Caleb's stomach twisted. "Sketchy how?" "Drugs. Trouble." Ethan had always been reckless, but this felt different. Darker. She pointed him to a corner booth where the guy with tattoos was a regular. Caleb thanked her and moved, his heart pounding. The booth was empty, but a waitress nearby overheard and chimed in. "You mean Jace?" He's bad news. Hangs with a crew that runs scams around the Tenderloin. Your friend might be in deep. The Tenderloin. Caleb had heard enough about San Francisco's roughest neighborhood to know it wasn't a place to wander alone. But Ethan was there. Or had been. And that was enough. He left the bar. The city's fog wrapping around him like a shroud. The streets grew grittier as he moved. Storefronts giving way to boarded-up buildings and flickering streetlights. In the Tenderloin, Caleb felt eyes on him, strangers sizing him up, deciding if he was prey. He clutched his phone, Alvarez's number on speed dial, and kept moving. The waitress's words echoed, bad news. What had Ethan gotten himself into? Caleb's mind spun with worst-case scenarios: drugs, debt, or something worse. He'd ignored Ethan for years, left him to face the world alone. If something happened to him now, Caleb would never forgive himself. A neon sign buzzed above a pawn shop, and Caleb stopped. A guy matching the bartender's description, tall, tattoos snaking up his neck, leaned against the wall, smoking. Caleb's pulse spiked. Hey, he called, voice steadier than he felt. You Jace. The guy's eyes narrowed, flicking over Caleb like he was sizing up a threat. Who's asking? His voice was low. Dangerous. Caleb held up Ethan's photo. I'm looking for him. Heard you were with him. Jace exhaled smoke. A slow, deliberate cloud. Don't know him. But his eyes lingered on the photo too long, and Caleb caught it. You're lying, Caleb said, stepping closer. Where is he? Jace laughed, cold and sharp. You're out of your depth, man. Walk away. But Caleb didn't. He couldn't. He grabbed Jace's arm, desperation overriding sense. Tell me where he is, or I swear. Jace shoved him back. Hard. Caleb stumbled, catching himself against a dumpster. You don't want to mess with me, Jace snarled. Your boy? He's in over his head. Try the old warehouse on Turk Street. But don't say I didn't warn you. Caleb's chest heaved as Jace walked off, disappearing into the fog. Turk Street. Another lead. Another thread to pull. He texted Alvarez the update, his fingers shaking. The warehouse was a few blocks away, and Caleb's legs moved before his brain caught up. The city felt alive. Predatory. Like it was daring him to keep going. The warehouse loomed ahead, a crumbling relic of brick and broken windows. Caleb's breath hitched as he approached, the air thick with damp rot. He pushed open a rusted door, the creak echoing in the dark. Inside, shadows danced across graffiti-covered walls. Ethan, he called, his voice swallowed by the emptiness. A scuffle in the corner made him freeze. He pulled out his phone's flashlight, sweeping the beam across the room. Crates. Tarps. A mattress stained with God knows what. Then, a figure curled up, hoodie up, barely moving. Caleb's heart stopped. Ethan. He ran, dropping to his knees beside the figure. It was him, Ethan. Pale and unshaven, but alive. His hazel eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Caleb. He whispered, voice raw. What? What are you doing here? Caleb's throat closed. He wanted to say everything. I am sorry. I was scared. "I love you," but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he grabbed Ethan's hand. Warm and real. "I'm here now," he said, voice breaking. "I'm not leaving you again." Ethan's eyes searched his. A flicker of the old spark there, but dulled by something deeper: pain. Maybe. Or fear. Before Caleb could say more, footsteps echoed behind them. Heavy. Deliberate. Caleb turned, his grip on Ethan tightening. They weren't alone. The footsteps grew louder, boots scraping against the warehouse's concrete floor. Caleb's pulse thundered as he pulled Ethan closer, shielding him instinctively. The flashlight beam caught a glint of metal and knife. Maybe. Or worse, in the hand of a shadowed figure approaching. "Who's there?" Caleb shouted, his voice steadier than he felt. Ethan's breathing was shallow, his body trembling against Caleb's. The figure stepped into the light, Jace, the tattooed guy from the pawn shop, flanked by two others. Their faces hard and unreadable. "Told you to walk away," Jace said, his smirk gone, replaced by something colder. Caleb's mind raced. He had no weapon, no plan. Just Ethan slumped against him and a burning need to get them both out. "What do you want with him?" Caleb demanded, buying time. Ethan's hand tightened on his. A silent plea. Jace tilted his head, like he was weighing his options. "Your boy owes us. Ran up a debt. Thought he could skip town." His eyes flicked to Ethan, who flinched. Didn't work out so well. Debt. Caleb's stomach churned. Ethan had always been impulsive, partying too hard, chasing thrills, but this. "How much?" Caleb asked, voice tight. "I'll pay it." Jace laughed, sharp and mocking. "You? With what?" "That sad little backpack." The others snickered, closing in. Caleb's grip on Ethan tightened, his mind scrambling for an out. He could try to run, but Ethan was too weak, barely able to stand. "I'll figure it out," Caleb said, stalling. "Just let him go?" His voice cracked, betraying the fear clawing at him. Jace stepped closer, the knife in his hand catching the light. "Not how this works," he said. "He stays until we're square." Ethan stirred, his voice barely a whisper. "Caleb, don't. Just go." The words hit like a slap. "Leave. After everything." Caleb shook his head. Fierce. "Not happening." The standoff stretched, seconds feeling like hours. Then, a siren wailed outside, distant but growing louder. Jace's head snapped toward the sound, his crew tensing. Caleb seized the moment. "Cops are coming." He lied, praying it would hold. "You want to deal with them or me?" Jace's eyes narrowed, but the sirens were real now. Closer. He cursed under his breath. "This ain't over." He spat, signaling his crew. They backed off, melting into the shadows as quickly as they'd appeared. Caleb exhaled, his legs shaking, but he didn't let go of Ethan. The sirens passed. No cops bursting in. A false alarm. But it had worked. Caleb turned to Ethan, whose face was pale, eyes glassy. "We need to get you out of here," Caleb said, hauling him up. Ethan was light. Too light. Like he hadn't eaten in days. Caleb half carried him out of the warehouse, the cold night air hitting them like a shock. They stumbled to a nearby diner, its fluorescent lights harsh but safe. Caleb sat Ethan in a booth, ordering coffee and a burger he wasn't sure Ethan could stomach. "What happened?" Caleb asked, his voice soft but urgent. "How did you end up like this?" Ethan stared at the table, fingers tracing cracks in the formica. "I messed up," he said finally. "After I left New York, I tried to start over. Got into some bad stuff parties. Pills. People like Jace. Thought I could handle it." His voice broke. "I couldn't." Caleb's chest ached. He wanted to reach across the table, to hold Ethan like he hadn't dared to years ago. But fear still clung to him. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked, the question burning. "I would have come." Ethan's eyes met his, raw and searching. "You stopped answering." "Caleb. Years ago. I thought you hated me." The words were a knife, twisting in Caleb's gut. He'd pushed Ethan away to protect himself, to bury feelings he couldn't face. And Ethan had paid the price. "I didn't hate you," Caleb said, voice thick. "I was scared. Of what I felt." He swallowed, the truth spilling out. "I loved you, Ethan. I still do." Ethan's breath hitched, his eyes widening. For a moment, they were back on that rooftop, the air electric with what-ifs. But then Ethan looked away, his jaw tight. "You don't get to say that now," he said, voice low. "Not after everything." Caleb's heart sank, but he nodded. He deserved that. "I'm here now," he said, "and I'm not leaving until you're safe." Ethan didn't respond, but he didn't pull away when Caleb reached for his hand. The diner's clock ticked past midnight. Caleb called Alvarez, updating her on Ethan's condition and Jace's crew. She promised to send a patrol to the warehouse and get Ethan to a hospital. As they waited, Caleb watched Ethan sip his coffee, the smallest spark of life returning to his face. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and regret. Caleb sat in a hard plastic chair beside Ethan's bed, watching the IV drip slowly into his arm. Ethan slept, his face less pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. But the shadows under his eyes told a story of weeks, maybe months off running. The doctor had been blunt: dehydration, malnutrition, traces of opioids in Ethan's system. "He's lucky you found him when you did," she'd said, her words a weight Caleb couldn't shake. Lucky. If Caleb had reached out sooner, if he hadn't let fear win, maybe Ethan wouldn't be here, hooked to machines in a sterile room. Alvarez stopped by, her notebook out, her questions sharp but not unkind. "He's not talking much," she said, glancing at Ethan's sleeping form. "But we've got eyes on Jace and his crew. They're small time, but slippery. You sticking around?" Caleb nodded. "As long as he needs me." Alvarez studied him, like she was trying to gauge his resolve, then left with a promise to follow up. Caleb's phone buzzed. Sarah, checking in from New York. "Is he okay?" she texted. Caleb didn't know how to answer. Physically, maybe. But the rest. That was a wound he'd helped carve. Ethan stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "You're still here," he said, voice hoarse. It wasn't a question, but it carried a weight of surprise, like he'd expected Caleb to bolt. "I told you," Caleb said softly. "I'm not leaving." Ethan's gaze lingered, searching, but he didn't speak. The silence was heavy, filled with years of unspoken words. Caleb broke it. "I need to know what happened, Ethan. Not just with Jace. Everything." He kept his voice gentle, but firm. If they were going to move forward, he needed the truth. Ethan looked away, his fingers picking at the hospital blanket. "After I left New York, I fell apart," he said finally. You shutting me out. It hurt. More than I expected. I moved to San Francisco. Thought I could reinvent myself. Met some people. Got caught up in their world parties. Drugs. Anything to feel something else. He paused, his voice dropping. Jace was one of them. He loaned me money when I was desperate. I couldn't pay it back. Caleb's chest tightened. He wanted to interrupt, to apologize again, but he let Ethan keep going. "I tried to run," Ethan said. "Thought I could disappear, start over again. But they found me. Always did." His laugh was bitter, hollow. "Guess I'm not good at running." "You don't have to run anymore," Caleb said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "I'm here. We'll figure this out." Ethan's eyes met his, and for a moment, Caleb saw the old Ethan, the one who'd made him laugh until his sides hurt, who'd painted wild murals on dorm walls, who'd looked at him like he was enough. But then Ethan's face hardened. "You can't just show up and fix this, Caleb. You broke something in me when you pushed me away. I don't know if I can trust you again." The words stung, but Caleb nodded. "I know, but I'm going to try. Every day, if you'll let me." Ethan didn't respond, but his hand stayed in Caleb's. A small concession. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits and police interviews. Ethan was discharged, weak but stable, and Caleb found them a cheap motel room while Alvarez worked the case. Jace's crew was still out there, and Ethan wasn't safe yet. Caleb barely slept, jumping at every noise, his mind replaying the warehouse, the knife, Ethan's fragile frame. One night, as rain pounded the motel roof, Ethan spoke up. "Why did you come, Caleb? Really?" His voice was quiet, but it cut through the dark. Caleb took a breath, the truth clawing its way out. "Because I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. Because I've loved you since that night on the rooftop, and I was too scared to admit it. Because losing you, it's the worst thing I can imagine." Ethan's eyes glistened, but he didn't speak. He reached out, his hand brushing Caleb's. And for the first time in years, Caleb felt a spark of hope. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. The motel room was cramped, the air thick with the smell of damp carpet and cheap coffee. Caleb sat on the edge of the bed, watching Ethan sketch in a tattered notebook. It was the first time he'd seen Ethan draw since college, and the sight that was familiar. Fluid lines stirred something deep in Caleb's chest. Ethan's hand moved with purpose, sketching a cityscape that looked like San Francisco but softer, dreamlike. "You're still good," Caleb said, breaking the silence. Ethan glanced up, a ghost of a smile on his lips. "It's the only thing that keeps me grounded," he said, then went back to his work. They'd been in the motel for 3 days, waiting for Alvarez to give them the all-clear. Jace and his crew were still a threat, but Ethan was stronger now, eating more, talking more. Caleb clung to these small victories. Even his guilt gnawed at him. Every time Ethan flinched at a loud noise or checked the locks, Caleb was reminded of how much he'd failed him. That night, Ethan opened up more. "I didn't just leave New York because of you," he said, staring at the ceiling. "I was running from myself, too. Growing up, I knew I was different. My dad didn't make it easy. He'd call me weak, say I needed to toughen up. When I met you, I thought maybe I could be myself. But then you pulled away, and it felt like proof I wasn't enough." Caleb's throat burned. "You were always enough, Ethan. I was the one who wasn't." He wanted to say more, to spill every regret, but Ethan's hand on his stopped him. "Let's not do this now," Ethan said. I need time." Caleb nodded, swallowing the ache. Time was fair. He'd give Ethan all of it. The next morning, Alvarez called. "We picked up one of Jace's guys," she said. "He's talking. Says Jace is planning to skip town, but he's got a grudge against Ethan. You two need to lay low." Caleb's stomach dropped. He glanced at Ethan, who was eating a bagel, oblivious. "We'll move," Caleb said. "Somewhere safer." He didn't tell Ethan the full truth, just enough to convince him to pack. They checked into a new motel across the city, this one near the ocean. The sound of waves a small comfort. Caleb kept his phone close, checking in with Alvarez hourly. Ethan noticed, his eyes narrowing. "You're not telling me something," he said. Caleb hesitated, then sighed. "Jace is still out there. He's not done with you." Ethan's face paled, but he nodded. "I'll handle it," he said, voice firm. "I got myself into this. I'll get myself out." "No," Caleb said, sharper than he meant. "We're in this together. You don't have to do it alone anymore." Ethan looked at him, something softening in his gaze. But he didn't argue. That night, they walked to the beach, the sand cold under their shoes. The moon hung low, casting silver across the water. Ethan stopped, staring out at the horizon. "I used to dream about us," he said, voice barely audible. "Back in New York. Thought we'd be something." Caleb's heart ached. "Me too," he admitted. "I was just too scared to let it happen." Ethan turned to him, his eyes searching. For a moment, Caleb thought he might close the distance, but Ethan just nodded and looked away. Back at the motel, Caleb couldn't sleep. He sat up, watching Ethan's steady breathing, and made a silent promise he'd keep Ethan safe, no matter what. The next morning, Alvarez called again. "We've got a location on Jace," she said. "He's holed up in a house in Oakland. We're moving in tonight. You want to be there?" Caleb glanced at Ethan, who was sketching again, lost in his world. "Yeah," he said. "I need to see this through." The drive to Oakland was tense. The city lights blurring past as Caleb sat in the back of Alvarez's unmarked car. Ethan had insisted on coming, despite Caleb's protests. "This is my mess," Ethan had said. His jaw set. "I'm not hiding anymore." Caleb couldn't argue with that fire in his eyes. So here they were, heading toward a confrontation that could end everything. Alvarez briefed them as she drove. "Jace's crew is small but dangerous. We've got backup. But you two stay back. No heroics." Her eyes flicked to Caleb in the rearview mirror. A warning. He nodded, his hand brushing Ethan's. A silent anchor. The house was a rundown Victorian, its paint peeling like old skin. Police vans parked a block away, officers moving like shadows. Caleb's heart pounded as he and Ethan waited in the car, the air thick with anticipation. Ethan's knee bounced. His sketchbook clutched like a lifeline. "You don't have to do this," Caleb whispered. "We can leave. Start over somewhere else." Ethan shook his head. "I'm done running." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed the fear he was trying to bury. Caleb wanted to pull him close, to promise everything would be okay. But promises felt hollow now. The raid was fast and loud shouts, breaking glass, the crackle of radios. Caleb's grip on Ethan's hand tightened as they waited, every second stretching into eternity. Then Alvarez appeared, her face grim but relieved. "Jace is in custody," she said. "No shots fired. Your friend's safe." Ethan exhaled, his shoulders sagging. Caleb felt the weight lift, but only slightly. Safe for now. But what about tomorrow? They followed Alvarez into the house, stepping over scattered debris-empty bottles, cigarette butts, a mattress in the corner. Jace sat in cuffs, his glare cutting through the room. When he saw Ethan, his lip curled. "You think this is over?" He spat. "You'll always owe." Caleb stepped forward, rage flaring. "He owes you nothing." His voice was low, dangerous, surprising even himself. Jace just laughed, but the sound was hollow, defeated. Outside, Ethan leaned against the car, staring at the ground. "It's really over?" he asked, voice small. Caleb nodded, though he wasn't sure. Jace was gone, but the scars he'd left in Ethan, on them both won't fade so easily. They drove back to the motel in silence. The ocean's roar a distant hum. Ethan spoke first, his voice soft. "I don't know what happens now. I don't even know who I am anymore." Caleb reached for his hand, tentative. "You're Ethan. You're enough. And I'm here, if you'll have me." Ethan didn't pull away, but he didn't answer either. They spent the night talking, not about Jace or the past, but about small things, movies, music, the way the city smelled after rain. It felt like a bridge, fragile but real, back to who they'd been. The next day, Alvarez called with good news. Jace's crew was crumbling, most of them turning on each other for lighter sentences. Ethan was free, legally at least. Caleb watched him pack his sketchbook, a flicker of the old Ethan returning. "Where to now?" Caleb asked, half afraid of the answer. Ethan shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. "Somewhere new. Maybe together." It wasn't a promise, but it was close enough. Caleb's heart lifted. And for the first time in years, he let himself hope. The sun rose over the Pacific, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. Caleb and Ethan stood on the beach, their shoes sinking into the sand. It was their last morning in San Francisco, and the weight of the past weeks hung between them, heavy but not crushing. Ethan had decided to leave the city, to start fresh somewhere quieter. Maybe Oregon, he'd said the night before, his voice tentative but hopeful. Somewhere I can paint, figure things out. Caleb had nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. He'd go with him. If Ethan wanted, he'd follow him anywhere. They walked along the shore, the waves lapping at their feet. Ethan stopped, picking up a smooth stone and turning it over in his hand. "I used to think about you all the time," he said, not looking at Caleb. "Even when I was falling apart. I'd wonder what you were doing, if you ever thought about me." Caleb's chest tightened. "Every day?" he said, voice raw. "I thought about you every day." Ethan glanced at him, his hazel eyes catching the morning light. For a moment, they were just two kids again, dreaming on a New York rooftop, the world wide open. Ethan tossed the stone into the sea. "I'm not ready to forgive you," he said, "but I want to try. I want us to try." The words were a lifeline, fragile but strong. Caleb nodded, afraid to speak, afraid to break the moment. They spent the day planning. Ethan wanted a small town, somewhere he could heal, away from the chaos of the city. Caleb suggested Astoria, a coastal town in Oregon he'd read about, quiet, artsy, a place to start over. Ethan's eyes lit up at the idea, and Caleb felt a spark of the old connection, the one that had made them unstoppable. They pooled their money, meager as it was, and bought bus tickets. The journey north was long, the bus rattling through forests and along cliffs. But it felt right. Ethan sketched in his notebook, Caleb stealing glances at the page's landscapes. Faces. A rough outline of two figures holding hands. Caleb's heart skipped. Was that them? In Astoria, they found a cheap apartment above a bookstore, the kind of place that smelled of old paper and possibility. Ethan started painting again, his work bolder now, full of color and life. Caleb took freelance design gigs, his laptop humming late into the night. They were cautious with each other, like dancers learning new steps. But every shared meal, every quiet laugh, felt like progress. One night, as rain tapped the windows, Ethan showed Caleb a painting, a vibrant mural of a city skyline. Two figures standing close, their hands almost touching. "It's us," Ethan said, his voice soft. "How I see us." Caleb's eyes stung. He reached out, his fingers brushing Ethan's. And this time, neither pulled away. Months passed in Astoria, the days blending into a rhythm of quiet healing. Caleb and Ethan built a life, small but steady, in their apartment above the bookstore. The town embraced them, its quirks and kindness a balm for old wounds. Ethan's paintings lined the walls of a local gallery, drawing crowds who saw the pain and hope woven into every brushstroke. Caleb's design work flourished, his confidence growing with every project. They weren't perfect. Some nights, Ethan woke shaking, memories of Jace and the warehouse pulling him under. Caleb would hold him, whispering reassurances, his own guilt a quiet shadow. Other days, Caleb's insecurities flared. The fear that Ethan might leave, that he'd never fully earn his trust. But they talked now, raw and honest, unraveling the years of silence. One evening, as spring bloomed, Ethan took Caleb to the gallery. A new painting hung in the center, unveiled just for him, two figures under a starry sky, hands clasped, a city fading in the background. "This is us now," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Not who we were, who we're becoming." Caleb's throat tightened. He pulled Ethan close, their foreheads touching, the world falling away. "I love you," he whispered, the words no longer heavy with fear. Ethan smiled, his eyes bright. "I love you too." They walked home hand in hand, the ocean breeze cool against their skin. The journey hadn't been easy years of distance, pain, and redemption, but they'd found each other again. Not as the boys they'd been, but as men who'd chosen to fight for something real. The stars above Astoria shone bright, a reminder that even broken things could mend, given time and courage. Caleb and Ethan had both, and for the first time, it felt like enough.